Welcome to Paint Pouring with Ron. In our first few videos we had a look at how we set up our workspace ready for painting. We had a look at how we get a canvas ready for painting. And then in the last video we had a look at paints and pouring mediums and other bits and pieces you might need when you're going to start doing a painting. Well, in today's video we finally see how it all comes together and we're actually going to do a painting. Now, the canvas I'm going to be using today is a 40 by 40 centimeter Mont Marte thin edge canvas. I've made sure that it's pretty tight, has a nice drumming sound. I've put in my large tacks at the back to give me some hand space underneath, and I've also taped off around the edges with my painter's tape just to keep the edges tidy. So that's my canvas. I'll just put that aside for now. Now, the technique we're going to do today is a good simple one to start off with if you're just learning, and that's a dirty cup pour. You'll see what that is in a moment. Now, when I've done dirty cup pours in the past, I've tended to use leftover paints, and often they've been a mix of paint and Floetrol and silicone. Now, that works fine, but more often than not you end up with a very busy looking painting. The look that I want to go for today is a bit more controlled with some nice looking cells. Well, that's the plan anyway. So instead of using Floetrol today, I'm going to be using my glue and water mix. Now, I've used a 60% glue to 40% water mix, and I find that works fine. Now, instead of using silicone today, you can use silicone if you want to. I'm going to try using the coconut milk. Now, as I said in the last video, it's not the coconut that's important. It's the main ingredient, dimethicone, that's important. So if you're going to buy some, make sure that dimethicone is the main ingredient listed on the back. Now, to make it easy to use, I've just put it in a little squeeze bottle, since we only want a couple of drops in each of our colours. Now, I thought the colours that I'm going to use today are the Mont Marte ones. I'm going to use a little bit of white, some yellow, some greens, a dark green and a light green, and a couple of blues. These ones, a light blue and a dark blue. I think they should look nice together. Now, do be a bit careful what colours you do choose when you're doing a dirty cup pour. If you go wild and use your three primary colours, yellow, blue and red together, because the colours are generally mixed together pretty well in a dirty cup pour, you're more than likely going to end up with brown in your final painting. If you don't want brown, don't use yellow, red and blue together in the same painting. I've got greens and blues and yellows here. They work quite nicely together. Again, don't use black and yellow together in the same dirty pour, because black and yellow make a yucky green colour. So do keep that in mind. Also, consistency is important with this sort of painting. I like to have my consistency reasonably thick. If it's too thin, you're going to get the colours blending together more than you really want them to. So I don't really want them to blend too much together, so I keep it fairly thick. And I want nice looking cells, so I keep it reasonably thick too. If it's too thin, you're going to get really huge, warped out of shape cells. We want to avoid that. Now, you might be wondering, how do I work out how much paint mix to use for my 40 by 40 centimetre canvas? Now, there are charts out there you can find that will tell you, but there is a simple formula you can use to work out the approximate amount of paint you're going to need. And that is multiplying the height of your canvas by the width of your canvas and then dividing your answer by 2.5. So for this 40 by 40 centimetre canvas, I'm going to need just over 600 grams of paint. Now that sounds rather a lot, and it's probably a bit more than I actually need. But it's good mixing up a bit too much paint rather than not enough. Otherwise you're just going to stretch everything too far trying to cover your whole canvas with the paint. So I'm going to mix up just over 600 grams of paint for this canvas. Okay, so if I'm using 6 colours and I want round about the same amount, I need just over 100 grams of each colour. Now I'm going to start my mix using half paint and half pouring medium. I may need to add a bit of extra paint to get the right consistency, or a bit more pouring medium to get the right consistency, but I'll start with a 1-to-1 mix. So I'm going to need about just over 50 grams of each colour and just over 50 grams of my pouring medium. Now to do that, I'm using my digital scales, which I've put in a plastic bag to protect the scales. I turn it on, make sure it's set to grams. I'll bring you up a bit closer so you can see exactly what I'm doing. I hope you can see okay. So I turn my scales on. I've made sure they're set to grams. Then I get my cup and I just zero my scales again. Now I'll start off with the white. Now I just like to get a bit of paper towel and wipe the edge a little bit, because sometimes you get little dried bits of paint on the edge and you don't want them falling into your paint because they'll end up in your painting and not make it work very well. Yeah, okay. Make it 0. There we go. It's up to 50. Yep, there we go. It's just 52, that's fine. And then we get the next colour, the yellow. Mont Marte, various types of yellow. This one is medium yellow. It's nice and bright. First time I've used it. Here we go. See how nice and creamy this one is, nice and thick. A little bit more. There we go. There. I'll do the greens. Oh. These bottles come with pumps, but I hate them. So I just do it this way. Oh, let's use that little blob. Oh, there we go. Hopefully this will work. We'll soon find out. This painting can be very unpredictable. Yes, this green is a bit thinner than the other one. Ooh, little blob. Now you can do the glue at the same time if you want to. I don't bother. I tend to do the paint first and then go back and put all the glue in. There's no hard and fast rule. There. So these colours should play nice together. Famous last words, we'll see. I'll get that little blobby bit off. There we go. And then my last one. Yeah, the colours look a bit disgusting in these yellow cups, but once you pour them out, they're fine. Okay, so that's the colours poured out. Now I'm going to add my pouring medium, the 60% glue, 40% water mix. Just make it 0 again. I'll give it a bit of a shake. Now you're going to get lots and lots of air bubbles in your glue and water mix. So once I've mixed the paints, I like to let them sit for a couple of hours or even overnight to let the air bubbles come out. Okay, this is reasonably runny, so we want just over 50 grams of this as well. So I did 53. Okay, a little bit more. There we go. Now that's the scales done with, so I can put them away. Now, I need to mix the paint together with the pouring medium. This is the fun bit. Now, you need to mix it pretty well. Some people use craft sticks. I like using spoons. But make sure it's really well combined. The last thing you want is blobby bits coming out onto your painting. If you've got lots of paint to mix, you can put on some music or something. Look out the window every now and again, because this will take a little bit of time. Now you're looking for a consistency for this painting like warm honey. I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. And you should be getting the same consistency, if you can, across all of your colours. So that's why with some of them you may need to add a bit more pouring medium, and some others you may need to even put in a bit more paint just to thicken it up a bit again, so that you can get the same consistency. If you're using a couple of metallic colours, however, the metallic colours tend to disappear if they're the same consistency as your other paints, so you make metallic colours a bit thicker than you would the other ones. I find the Mont Marte colours mix pretty easily. Some brands don't, particularly the really thick ones, and you need to mix for a while. Now if you're using a spoon, sometimes if your paint is thick, you'll get a thick layer sitting inside your spoon. So if that happens, you can just get a craft stick and just do that to get the thick bits off your spoon back into the cup. You should only need to do that once or so. Now let's check this consistency. I hope you can see. So if I do a little swirl, it should last about 3 seconds or so. So we're going to swirl, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's more or less all right. I'll let it sit for a bit. I may add in a little bit more pouring medium later if it's thickened up a bit. But this seems to work quite well. Now I'll just go ahead and do all the other colours, and then we'll come back to our next step. So that's done. I've managed to get all of these colours more or less the same consistency. As I said before, a little bit like warm honey. If you do a little circle, drizzle, the little mound that's left should last about 3 seconds or so. Not sure if you can see that, but that's what you're looking for. Now, when you're finished with your glue, it's a good idea to wipe out the lid and the top before you put the top on, or you're going to glue your container closed. Just a handy tip. Okay. All right, now I need to leave those for a couple of hours, so I'll go inside, read some emails, have a bit of lunch, and then I'll come back and continue. Now I'm going to cover those with a bit of cling wrap, just so the edges of the paint doesn't dry. So all I do is just cover the whole lot like so, and then I put them aside, and then I'll be all ready to go. Often I mix the paints in the morning first, and then I get my canvas ready and the other bits and pieces ready, and then I come back after lunch and do my painting. If you're going to do more than one painting, well, you can make up heaps of paint in advance. You might store it in a squeeze bottle or a drink bottle and just pour it out as you need it. There we go. Almost done. So, I'll see you again soon. Hi there again, everyone. It's been a couple of hours since I mixed my paints, and now I'm back ready for the fun bit, the actual painting. Now this is where it gets messy. So I'm wearing my rubber gloves, got my apron on, wearing my old painting clothes, and I've put my canvas on top of my puppy toilet training pad just to catch the paint that falls off the canvas. Now, just before I start, I'll make sure my canvas is level. Now, my table is level, so the canvas should be level as well, but I'll just double check. Just go around the edges like that. And yes, my canvas is ready, so I won't get my paint running off to one side while it's drying. Now, I need to mix in my coconut hair serum that I'm using today. Now, the usual go with this is about 1 drop every 30 grams of paint or so. Now, I've got just over 100 grams of paint here, so I'll use 3 to 4 drops in each colour. Now, you don't need to put it in the white, but I might as well today. Now, I haven't used this before in this technique, so I'm curious to see how it works out. Let's see, we go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that was 4. 1, 2, 3. Oh. 1, 2, 3. This one. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that was 4. Never mind. Don't get carried away and put heaps in, because your painting will just go explode with cells. Okay, now I need to mix it in reasonably well. You don't want to be left with big blobs of this in your paint, because you'll end up with just huge, gigantic cells. So I'll mix it in fairly well. That should do. So as you can see, most of this paint pouring thing is mixing. You're going to get very good at it after a while. Now if you're using a little canvas, you should be able to fit all of your paint into 1 cup. I normally prefer using a single cup, but because this canvas is reasonably large, I can't fit all of my paint into 1 cup, so I'm going to use 2, which will make things a little trickier, but I'm sure we can manage. Okay, halfway there. Yes. You never know what you're going to get. Hopefully something nice. Sometimes one colour dominates over all the other colours. I'm hoping it's not the dark green, because it's not my favourite colour today. Knowing my luck, it will be the dark green. We'll wait and see. Now I'm going to start with the greens in my cup and the yellow, and then I'll put some white, and then the blues, and then a bit more white again, and then the other colours. We'll see what happens. And then this one. Now, as I said before, you can use silicone. Silicone works really well. If you're using silicone and Floetrol, I probably would put fewer drops of silicone in, because the Floetrol is very reactive too. So if you put the 3 or 4 drops of silicone in with the Floetrol mix, you're going to get an explosion of cells over your painting, which is fine if you want it to look that way. Okay. Now, here are my cups. I've reused these ones. Just wash them out when you're done and you can use them again. Saves the environment just a little bit. Now, I'll put half of my colours in this one and half in the other one. So I'll start off with green. How many layers will I do? I might just do I don't know, we'll see. You don't want to put too little paint in, otherwise it just all mixes together. Now I'm not going to layer, I'm just going to drop the paint in, like that. The yellow, that's why it's called a dirty pour. You just pour it all in and hope for the best. Some white. And then we'll do the blue. I might do a touch of white again. Just dropping it in the centre. And then I'll start again with my dark green. And I'll use it all up. And my light green. And my yellow. You might have heard of a technique called a flip cup. If you're doing a flip cup, you layer the paints rather than pour them just on top of each other, like what I'm doing. Oh, I was going to do white, never mind. Might do the white now. As you can see, I wouldn't have fit all of this into the one cup. I probably have too much paint, but as I said before, it's better having too much than not enough. Okay, so that's that. Now, hopefully it'll work. Let's move that aside. Bring my canvas back. Hopefully you can see it all happening. Now, some people just get their cups and turn them upside down on the canvas. I don't like doing that because I throw it everywhere. So I use my wall paint scraper that I picked up from Bunnings. Now, if you're using one cup, you could put it more or less in the middle, but I'm using two, so I'll just offset them a bit from each other. So tip it over. I'll start here so I can put it level. Just slide it onto my canvas like that. As you can see, I'm not throwing paint everywhere. Okay. Now, I don't like just lifting them up because you get the paint dripping down the sides and you get circles of drips on your paint. What I am going to do is lift it up, but as I lift it up, I'll pull it backwards towards the back of the canvas. So I'll start here somewhere, and then I'll pull it backwards. I'll give it a second or so for the paint to go down. We'll see what happens. Right, so I lift and just drag it back off the canvas. So lift, and I just pull it off. Now what you can do is use some of the remnants to go around your corners, because corners tend to be the hard bits to cover. I'm getting cells already, so we'll see what happens. There we go. Now, you might have heard of torches, or yes, heat guns, or heat torches, or torch guns, or whatever you call them. I get mine from my local hardware store. You use this to pop bubbles, but you also use it to heat up your paint to allow the oil to come to the surface and create your cells. I like to stretch my paint a little bit first, then torch, and then finish off my painting. Right, and see, most of my paint is up this end of the canvas. So what I'm going to do is just move the paint slowly. You don't have to be fast. Move the paint slowly backwards and forwards. working it to the end of the canvas. I'll go to this corner. Oh. And then I'll move it back to that corner. Then I'll move it back here to the middle. And now I'm going to torch. Now don't bring your gun too close to the paint. You risk burning it and you'll get an explosion of cells happening. So keep some distance away. Just circle backwards and forwards over your painting, like so. Just gently warming up the paint. Popping the air bubbles. Giving time for the oil to rise through the paint to create your cells. Now we torch now rather than at the end because the moving of the paint over the canvas is what's going to make your cells larger. Just gently warming. The longer you do it, the more cells are going to pop up. Got a bit close there. Some people like lots and lots of cells, others not so many. I think cells are pretty, so I tend to go for lots of cells. Okay, that should do. As you can see, a lot of cells have popped up. You can let it sit for a little bit if you want to, just to see what happens. I'll start stretching. Now I've got a few little caterpillars here. That's when you get a lot of cells next to each other, which aren't that pretty, but it's right in the middle. There's not much I can do about that. All right, so just like before, I'm going to move my paint down my canvas. You don't need to do it fast. If you do it fast, you risk stretching out your cells too much. I'll go back the other way. Got a fly buzzing around. Flies tend to like paints. I'll go down to this corner. Okay. I want to move the paint back over this way. Some lovely looking cells. Hope you can see it. Stretching everything out. Got plenty of paint on my canvas. Okay, how are we going here? Now you don't want to overstretch it because you'll end up with wonky looking cells. So just gently moving your paint backwards and forwards. I don't particularly like this muddy yellow on this side, so I'll get rid of some of that. There's that fly again. Don't land in my painting. see that again in a second. You can see how messy this is. Okay, I'm just about done. Just play with my composition a bit until I like it. Just move everything this way a bit. It's very stripy, this one. I thought with this particular pour you tend to get more of a sort of cloudy effect. Okay. Don't want to overstretch that corner. All right, well, that turned out interesting. I might just give it a little bit of a torch, oops, to get rid of some of the bubbles. Okay. That'll do. I don't want an explosion of other cells appearing. All right, nice. Now the last thing I'm going to do is make sure my corners are covered. So you can just pick up a little bit of paint. Just go over any white bits that are still showing around your canvas. Making sure you don't drip into the middle of your canvas while you're doing it. Ooh. Pick up the green. Should pick up a bit more green there. And while we're going on this side, oh, there's a bit missing here. I'll just pick up some of this and do this side. Okay, now you'll notice lots of drips happening down the side of your canvas. It's a good idea to remove those because those drips, well, they don't look very nice, but they can also drag the paint off the canvas. So I'm going to just go around with my palette knife under the edge of my canvas. Just to remove those drips. I think the dimethicone gives very nice looking cells. Sometimes the silicone can give messy looking cells, particularly if you use it with Floetrol. You might get a very warped look. Now I do a painting that is a very warped looking one, but I'll show you that another time. Now I'm just going around. You might have to do that a couple of times until it stops dripping. You'll notice your painting keeps developing. When you let it sit, the oil will keep doing its thing for a while. You may get more cells appearing. You may see more rings around your cells. Your cells may grow larger, especially if you have a thin sort of mix. You can get very large cells. There we go. Awesome, I think that turned out really well. Well, I'm just going to get rid of these gloves and wash my hands, and then I'll get my camera and bring you down for a bit of a closer look of this finished canvas. Okay, so that's the finished looking canvas. I think it turned out really well. The colours stayed nice and bright. And we got some very interesting cell action happening in this painting as well. This corner perhaps is a bit overstretched. See how some of those cells are really long rather than round. That's what happens if you stretch out your paint too much in one direction. Well, I hope you enjoyed this first video showing an actual painting happening, and I hope you understand now how all the things I showed you in the first couple of videos work together to create an actual finished painting. Now this painting is going to take about a week to dry before I can take the tape off the back and the pins out, and then I'll put it in my rack over here to cure fully. It'll take a couple of weeks to do that. Now, to keep the flies off, I'm glad the one that buzzed in before didn't land in the painting, but to keep the flies off, I just use my food covering net. I've showed you this before. Food covering net, and that will just go over my painting, but I'll clean up everything first. As I said in my last video, cups you can reuse. Just dump them in a bucket of water if you don't want to wash them up straight away, and rinse them on the outside tap, not inside, because you'll clog up your sink. Okay, so I hope you had a good time today. I had a good time, and we'll see you next time.